Hey, this is Frank. You're listening to an Origins episode of the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. Do you ever feel like you have friends who sometimes just don't get each other? This is a podcast that I recorded with two of my friends, Jake and Noah. We find out the hard ways we struggle to communicate better and sometimes succeed, but sometimes not. For years, the three of us have talked about communication and how it's sometimes easier said than done. Even when we're trying to be understanding, our well-meaning intentions often get lost in translation. We decided to share these conversations with the world. Join us as we find out what happens when three friends try to learn how to really talk to each other.
So rhapsody actually means to weave.
Is that true?
Look it up.
Why do I have to look everything up?
I thought you had it ready. You've been looking everything up.
You're the researcher.
Rhapsody means, what'd you say?
To weave.
A portion of an epic poem.
Yes. Look up the etymology.
Archaic.
All right.
Archaic what?
A miscellaneous collection.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that part.
A highly emotional utterance.
To stitch.
There you go.
A musical composition of a regular form having an improvisatory.
I think whatever, however,
word.
improvisatory.
I know what it meant, but I don't know how to say it. Character.
So here's the interesting thing about the job of a lexicographer, which is the term for somebody who makes a dictionary.
Wait, the job of a lexicographer?
A lexicographer does something with a dictionary?
The job of a lexicographer is to look at the world and describe it.
Well, no, this is actually the difference. So back whenever they were first putting together the dictionary, it was intended to be prescriptive. It was intended to be a collection of the intended use of words. But the problem is language evolves, language changes. We use it differently all the time. People say lexicographer instead of lexicographer, and stuff. It's very creative. So at some point it shifted and they said, there's no way we can prescribe anything. The only thing we can really do is describe the way that words are used in common parlance. So that's how you get things like the word literally meaning figuratively, because this is not the literal definition, but it is the way the word is used.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
An example of how parlance is used is in military parlance, bug out means to retreat.
Nice. Thank you. Were there any other words that I used that feel like they need?
Used in a sentence?
Yeah.
Dictionary.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, it's your turn.
Oh, I looked up this word in a dictionary.
That's a sentence.
Isn't it interesting that
Could you define sentence?
Lexicography is the practice of compiling dictionaries?
Well, a lexicon is basically a compilation of the words used in a language. So, I guess you could call a dictionary a lexicograph. Which would be what? The measure of words? That's interesting. What?
A lexicographer? Google Trends is a lexicographer.
On this episode, we look up words.
Well, that's cool because there actually is like a graph. This is in usage in 1831 like crazy, but 1832 people stopped using that word. Right?
A lexigram or ideograph. Ideograph? A graphical depiction of a single word. That's what it says.
That's kind of interesting. If we take the word lex and the word idio, it means, you could use the word idiolect. Everybody has their own dialect, but it's specific to themselves.
It would be interesting to just say words to Jake and then see what he has to say about them.
Yeah. We could change the podcast to just that, I think.
There's a real psychology test in there.
All right. What do you think of nomenclator?
I think it's wrong.
What are you
Talking about nomenclature?
No,
Yeah,
nomenclator.
it's a person who nomenclates.
It is not.
Nomenclature.
Nomenclator.
Nomenclator?
Nomenclator. Nomenclator.
It's somebody
I don't
who
know what that is.
nomenclates.
I've heard of nomenclatorus, but I don't know anything
What's
about
that
it.
mean?
I've heard of it. I could use it in a sentence if you want.
A nomenclator is a book containing collections of lists or words. It's another word for dictionary.
What?
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
A book containing
What
collections or
other
lists of
words
words.
for dictionary can you find?
One who gives names to or invents names for things. That's what I said.
I know.
A nomenclator is a person who nomenclates.
I know, but it didn't relate strongly to dictionary. That is one of the other definitions. So is one who announces the names of guests or persons generally.
A nomenclator is
That's
someone
an announcer.
who dictates.
Dictates?
Dictionates.
Dictionates.
Sort of like
Gloss.
how Frank introduces all of us in every episode.
Do I?
Kinda.
How many
Oh,
Three
the
friends.
Pre-roll I recorded once and forget exists? Yes, I do that.
I do that.
Yeah. I don't do that every week for the audience. I just did it the once and you get to hear it every week.
Wow.
You're welcome.
Talk about ROI.
Yeah, I just broke the fourth wall. It seems like the second wall in an audio podcast, but
Or is it the fifth?
I don't know.
Because look,
Okay. The listeners may need some context.
oh, he did it again. He did it again, guys. Wow, they're so aware of themselves right now. If I were them, I would be insecure.
Yeah. Lexicon.
Yeah.
Word book.
Vocabulary. Wörterbuch.
Word book. Thesaurus. I don't know.
Nachschlag das Wort vor.
What do you suppose the topic for today is?
You know, I've been thinking a lot about
Cliffhanger. Next time on the Unbecoming Platypus podcast.
Yeah, we could publish that.
No, I'm really curious. No, I'm really curious. What did you think I was going to say when I left that empty void, Noah?
With you, could be anything.
Yeah, what was the first thing that came to your mind?
The first thing that came to my mind was, why isn't he speaking?
Exactly. There was fully no projection, just anticipation on my. I'm like, I don't know what he's been thinking a lot about. Let's find out. Nothing.
You know, what's weird is my brain went to a lot of places, but the only one that really came to life was mulberries. I've been thinking a lot about mulberries.
Why?
Well, we've got a mulberry tree out in the backyard. And Thatcher saw them and he started eating them. And dude had just mulberry all over his face, all over his hands. Purple boy.
They don't kill you or something?
No, they're related to the blackberry. It's essentially a blackberry.
That means they don't hurt you.
That's right.
It doesn't. It's just that most people have heard of blackberries and perhaps have even
Everything
eaten them.
on Earth is related to everything on Earth, and some of the things kill you.
They're closely related.
So what would you say you've been thinking about mulberries?
That we have them.
Oh,
Yeah, sounds intense.
this guy's getting simpler.
Yeah, well, it's just that I hadn't really been thinking about mulberries, and then I started thinking about mulberries. And so I guess you could say there's just sort of like a concentration of thought at this point in my life as opposed to other times in my life. It's a contrast thing.
We're pro podcasters.
Yeah, I think mulberries in it.
Well, that's rude.
We
I
don't
think
live
it's
too
it.
far away from Mulberry Grove.
That's true.
do?
I used to live on Mulberry Lane. It was actually a road lined with mulberry trees.
There's something here.
Frank, what's your experience with mulberries?
What?
We've both just said something about mulberries, and now it's your turn.
You guys didn't hear the progressive insurance thing?
Nope. Did you just play something from the soundboard?
No, I played this word of the day from Merriam-Webster, and it wasn't a word of the day. It just said, this episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. And then you looked at me. I don't know what you guys said. All I heard was something about Progressive Insurance. So I wish you could play your audio in a way that played on the podcast.
You have to share.
What?
We've done this once before. You have to share. It's just
you have
like
to
a
close
video
all
meeting.
your apps. It's so crazy. World's so crazy.
I
don't care about
this
sharing it.
progressive thing.
What? You
I
want
just really want to hear the progressive thing.
Oh, well, I'll share then. If it's important to you.
Sounds like what Frank said.
Sounds like what?
What you said.
This episode was brought to you by Progressive Auto Insurance.
No, they don't say Progressive Auto Insurance. It's just Progressive Insurance.
I think we're about to find out.
How do I get back to the beginning of this clip? There's a chance you'll never hear this. I'm sorry.
What if comparing car insurance?
Did you hear that part?
Yep.
I don't know how to go back, so.
Rates is as easy as putting on your favorite podcast. With
If you
Progressive,
refresh the
it is.
page,
Just visit the Progressive website to quote with all the coverages you want. You'll see Progressive's direct rate. Then their tool will provide options from other companies so you can compare. All you need to do is choose the rate and coverage you like. Quote today at Progressive.com to join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
I just got a really good idea.
What?
I got a really good idea.
Okay.
We should just play ads from other places that we're not getting paid for.
wait, what was about to happen after that jazzy little piano bit?
I don't know. I didn't know if you cared.
Where's the Pink Panther anyway?
This is Merriam-Webster's Word of the Day for Saturday, August 4th.
My birthday.
Brought to you by Merriam-Webster's Collegiate Dictionary, 11th edition. Available from your favorite bookstore or online at www.merriam-webster.com.
The word of the day for August 4th is nomenclator, spelled Nomenclator. Nomenclator is a noun that can mean a book containing collections or lists of words, or it can also mean one who gives names to or invents names for things, as in this sentence. Within days of her promotion, Jenna found herself in the role of nomenclator, trying to name the company's newest product. Nomenclator means name caller in Latin, from nomen meaning name, and the verb calare
You can
meaning
go ahead
to
and
call.
stop it.
In ancient Rome, the nomenclator's
all the
job.
things you care about right now.
You know what I really want to point
was
out,
that?
though, is like,
I just started playing a game.
Oh, nice. The presence of a phone reduces erections by 50% or something.
I've heard that.
What?
I don't know. He told me the statistic. You're listening to an Origins episode of the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. In these episodes, we're learning. We don't know what we're doing yet, and sometimes it shows. We think there's beauty in being a beginner, and we're learning from them, so we publish them. So thanks for listening, and rest assured that there will be better Unbecoming Platypus podcasts ahead.
Absorption of information. Similar but different. You know, this whole nomenclator can be a book or the person who makes a book thing makes me think of, like, bi-monthly. Does it mean every other month? Does it mean twice a month?
Yeah. Bi-weekly.
Bi-weekly is, biannually. Bisexual. Does it mean that you're twice sexual, or does it mean that twice as sexual you are? I just can't figure it out. So Frank and I have been talking a lot about how
Who could know?
no one is really, most of the time, responding to what another person is doing, but really they're just responding to something in their own head. And I feel like that relates a lot to like some of this other stuff we've been talking about, how these communication breakdowns occur because I can say a word and it means something to Noah and it means something to Frank and it means something different to me. So I feel like I'm communicating clearly, but it comes across as something different because that word has a different symbol. Well, in the same way, if I hear what someone else has to say, I place this huge blanket of meaning and history and all this stuff on top of a word. And I'm really only responding to what I think or my experience of the thing, and perhaps not what the other person is trying to say. So it's like we've talked a lot about how I have good intentions and I try to communicate something. So I'm the speaker. But on the other side, as the person who's listening, there's this other dynamic that happens, and it is projecting myself onto what the speaker is saying.
Everything's a symbol.
Everything is simple.
A symbol.
Is a symbol?
Mm,
You're just projecting.
yeah,
what you
Not a
think
symbol like
means.
in a drum kit.
right. Is it a simple symbol?
It's a symbol like in hieroglyphics.
Oh.
Like letters.
You know, some sounds are sibilants, like symbols. Some sounds are assonant.
Some sounds are synonyms.
This is going backwards.
I think the only sounds that are synonyms are themselves.
What?
S is a synonym of s. That's not actually true.
Of course not.
In phonology, we have both phonemes and oh crap, I can't think of the word.
Frank's looking it up.
No, I'm not.
Anyway, there's
Why
there's
have you
sounds
and
that have
Frank been
meanings.
talking about this a lot lately?
Well, we've had some misunderstandings. I mean, we live together, and so we talk to each other or don't talk to each other quite a bit, and then end up in a conversation. And I guess sometimes you end up in the situation where you read what somebody has said and you perceive it a certain way, and unless you get some sort of clarification, you don't know in what ways you're wrong.
Yeah, I feel like often people have a sort of voice inside of them. Sometimes you don't even know where it came from, but it's like just your self-talk, inner voice sort of thing. And we all have a tendency to sort of superimpose that on what we hear in the world. So, you have a meeting, and then after the meeting, someone says, "Hey, whatever. It seemed like you could have been X." And they're giving you this like well-intentioned feedback. They want you to be better. They seem like there was something missing, but all you hear is the same thing you always hear, which is I'm not good enough, or I should be this, or, whatever. It does, like the actual content doesn't really matter so much as the concept.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's like, I don't know. I've had this in relationships where someone will say, hey, what you said hurt me, and I go, what? What are you talking about? And they're like, well, you were being really critical of the way that I did this thing. And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't feel in any way critical. Like, I was just saying my observation. It didn't feel, it felt neutral to me, or perhaps even positive. But that person's history comes up and it says, oh, no, what you're actually doing is you're saying, I am worthless as a human being and I should be better, or whatever it is. But yeah, there's this interesting thing where it's like, the more that you can be aware of what sorts of emotions or what sorts of thoughts are popping up in the present moment, the more you realize there is a discrepancy between the words that were used and the meaning that I have derived. And especially when there's a pattern in that meaning, whenever I keep seeing this person and this person keeps saying, Jake, you really need to live your life differently. And it feels very judgmental every time. Who's the judger in this situation? It's me. It's my own things that I've boxed up in my subconscious that are getting overlaid on top of this message that's trying to come out. That person's not trying to be judgmental at all. In most cases, I would say they don't know me well enough. They don't have a reason to be judgmental toward me, but my own judgments of myself get layered on top of this. And then I think of that person as a judgmental prick. No, it turns out that's my own inner critic.
Definitely. Do you have that a lot? Where someone tells you to live your life differently?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They tell you that in those words, or that's how you take it?
That's how I take it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the clarification I needed.
Yeah. That's sort of the thing that I'm pointing at is like, it feels, and maybe this is where that topic a few weeks ago came from. Like, am I my brother's keeper? Like, it often feels as though people are giving me advice as to how I should live my life differently. And I'm like, why do you even have an opinion on this? And then I go, oh, I'm actually just talking to myself.
Yeah, I think there's something similar that happens. I don't know if it would be like it's not an inverse but like, I think a lot of times people say something that's veiled or incomplete, hoping for a certain, like they're projecting a certain, like, this means something and I'm expecting a certain response from you.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
I'm trying to think of a good example, but, asking an unrelated question to try to get to, do we have a good example of this, Frank? I don't know. Even something like the other day, my sister randomly texted me, how old is Amy? And what city does she live in? And I just answered those two questions and said nothing else to my sister. And I kind of wonder, and knowing my sister, I have a feeling she wanted me to go, why? And like start a conversation, and I didn't.
Okay.
And that's not even the best example of what I'm talking about. But I think that people just assume something's going to go a particular way because they're throwing out what's in their head, expecting it to turn into a conversation or take the conversation a particular way. And it meant nothing to me. I just answered the questions.
I think that's kind of like that inner voice you were talking about, Frank. Like, how many times have you actually had this conversation in your head before you started it in order to like have this idea of where the narrative is going to go?
Sure.
Like, I've already got my response prepared before you say this, and then you don't say what I think you're going to say, and my expectation isn't met.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a similar sort of thing. I feel like a lot of times people are responding in that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not bad. I just have a little like filter on it that's like, yeah, I mean, most likely they're responding to themselves, for themselves, out loud.
Mm-hmm.
And humans have tons of overlapping experience. So maybe they have great insights and it'll be really helpful for me to apply them to my life. Or maybe they're just talking to themselves and it's only for them. And so, but you know, that's like, that's on the hearing side, how you could take things. It's also sort of important to think about the how you'll respond sort of part of the equation, which is like, is the world better if I share this insight, or is this just for me? That kind of thing.
Yeah. 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 It is a very interesting thing. And I mean, like, if we understand ourselves to be both conscious, subconscious, unconscious beings, there's all this stuff floating around, all infinite potential. I could say flu bar right now. I didn't know I was going to say that.
Flu bar?
I actually said flu bar.
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Yeah, no one does.
But I do know what foo bar is.
It was a combination of sounds that came out of, you know, no history of mine. It was just like part of the infinite potential. There's all of that within all of us. We could be a totally different person tomorrow if we really wanted to be. And then there's this subconscious piece, and that is the stuff that, like, you know, happened 2 weeks ago, and I don't remember what I had for breakfast 2 weeks ago, right? It was knowledge that I had at one time, but it has since been repressed in some way or another. Traumas often get, you know, placed in this place. And then you've got this conscious side. And what's really interesting is that we often have a hard time sort of bridging the gap between our conscious mind and this subconscious place, even though it's a part of us. And I think it's really interesting because this projection piece really is a window directly into that subconscious. It is, when I look at the difference between what that person said and what I believed they meant, what's left is me. It is a reflection of my history and my interpretation. That's my story being reflected right back at me in that moment. And when those stories often come back as, you know, you're insignificant or something like this, it probably points to an area that, you know, you're coloring something a little bit too drastically in one direction. If it always comes back as, everybody thinks I'm amazing, I'm just the best person in the world, well, it probably points toward, you know, sort of a narcissistic tendency. But that real, like, wrestling with, what's this person mean? The real curiosity that comes with trying to understand another person. I think that moment when the ego sort of dissolves and it says, let me just see what I can intake here, is a great moment of connection. But man, sometimes the ego and history speaks so much louder. And I think that's one of the things that really gets in the way of communication.
I agree.
You could bring this full circle and you could define flu bar, and you could be a nomenclator.
Wow. You're right about that. That would be a full circle. It'd be a rather small circle.
I think a flu bar is the point in which the seasonal flu reaches contagion.
Beyond recognition?
No, we have flu. Everyone has it. That's the flu bar.
That's okay. The flu bar on the graph.
Yeah.
What happens if it's a flu that no one has seen before?
What do you mean? It might not be on a graph.
No, I'm just saying then it's, you know, flued up beyond all recognition.
Flued up?
Flu bar.
Oh, I see.
I thought you might.
Look at you nomenclators.
That, though, that specific projection piece is what, specifically in Jungian analytic psychology, is used. Like, the idea is, I'm not a therapist who's like trying to use something like cognitive behavioral therapy to like change your core beliefs or anything like that, or point them out. What's really going on in this situation is I'm developing a relationship with you in which you're so comfortable that you're just telling me the story of your life. And then you have these little slips, and it's like, I'm telling you things that aren't actually part of the story. I'm telling you my interpretation.
Right.
Freud would have used something like dreams for this. What is the subconscious working on? Despite my conscious mind, what's just below the surface, and all these symbols start popping out. And it's like, oh, this is you. This is your interpretation. This is your story and how you took it.
Yeah.
And then dealing with that stuff, that's another thing entirely. Like, are you willing to look at what that reflection is telling you?
Yeah. I think a slight correction to the record is in order for CBT.
Okay.
Because I don't think its goal is to change your core beliefs.
Well, that's to point them out. Yeah.
It's really to provide a sort of dialect or symbol change potential. And it's a sort of triangle-based system about action, thoughts, and emotions, and how these things inform each other. I think those are the three on the CBT triangle.
Is that CBT or DBT?
DBT is definitely a version of CBT that uses the word dialect, but they're similar things. Thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. What we think affects how we feel and act. What we do affects how we think and feel. What we feel affects how we think and act.
Well,
so any of these places are potential change areas, but it's really in changing like symbolism about them.
Oh man. Full circle.
Full triangle. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the beginning. I've been talking a lot about like getting to know myself recently, and so this is like the beginning of, okay, I've seen myself reflected back at me, and in so many ways, it really is, okay, what do you do when you see that reflection? Do you turn away? Do you increase the sort of opacity so that you don't have to look at it more and really double down on all these things I believe about myself? Or is it, okay, why? And when you get to the place of that why, a lot of those stories start to break down. And, that was the first thing for me was I spoke a little bit about what was happening in previously in my relationships. And it was like, I was doing all of these things because I thought I was supposed to. I was fulfilling these responsibilities and really neglecting myself because I thought I was supposed to. And this was a role I was playing. It was a mask that I put on. And when I started to question the value of that mask, the value of that role, was when I became sort of free of that and said, oh, you can actually accept yourself, the feelings you have, the thoughts that you're having, the desires that you have. And you don't owe it to anybody but yourself to actually be honest with those things. And I mean, I think that it's incredibly valuable what you said as well. Like, does that mean that all of a sudden I start acting out on every desire that I have because I realize that, I have the ability to be an autonomous human being? No, it probably would be on balance a terrible thing for the world. But man, there are some crazy the ways that we hide from ourselves.
Do you know who, do you have a responsible party for who put that idea in your head?
Which idea?
This is my role to fulfill.
Oh, I think that there is no one single responsible party. I think that society operates well because we have certain roles that people fulfill.
Sure.
We are socialized to understand that when you're in public, you act a certain way. We're socialized to understand there's an indoor voice and an outdoor voice. All of these norms and mores sort of create right and wrong categories. I think that when you start to believe that those things are concrete is where the issue really stems. It's kind of like what you said a few minutes ago. Like, it's not bad. It's just what happens. But I think that it's sort of an illness of civilization, if you will, to believe that I am my mask. I am my profession.
Yeah. I mean, I think I agree with what you're saying. I also think there's value in, and certainly if you feel, if there's some part of you or there's some recurrent thought pattern or idea, negative self-talk that keeps coming up for you that isn't necessarily societal, like there often are for most people.
Mm-hmm.
These I have found great like freedom from in naming and identifying where they came from, like giving them an author.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was this person who told you that.
Sure.
And are you like, is that person in your life? Are they important? Are you going to let them ruin who you can become? And putting real words around this so that when it comes back up next time, this negative self-talk thing, you can be like, oh, I mean, that person does not love me. They are not invested in my life, and their symbol that they've implanted in me should go.
I love that. That makes so much sense to me. I mean, you can honestly like give it a face at that point. It is very interesting to bring those things up because, you know, I mean, there's a lot of sort of cultural discussion around trauma right now. We're learning a lot of stuff about it. And I mean, trauma is one of those words that it's almost a catch-all bucket. Like it could refer to something very, very minor that had a lasting impact, or it could refer to something that, you know, was hugely impactful and literally changed your life in one moment. There seem to be these phases of acknowledging that relationship where, oh, I received this message from externally, and kind of sitting in it, wallowing in it. There's this like, okay, I am a victim sort of thing that you go through. And then it is, well, there's this grief process that you go through and you say, okay, look at all the things that I missed out on. I could have been more if I hadn't believed this for 20, 30 years, whatever it is. And then there's this moment where it's, okay, wait, this is who I am. We are all in some way a product of, you know, the sum of our parts and our experiences. These just happen to be mine. If they hadn't been these, they'd be something else. What am I going to do with this?
Yeah. Yeah. There's sometimes I say, is it the first time in your life you felt like this? Mm-hmm. When someone's having like what seems to me to be a reaction that isn't necessarily coupled with the reality of the symbols as I see them.
Yeah.
And I've had many times where I've gone back through history and I'm like, no, it's not the first time I felt like this. And that's not. And then I get like, it might be the stupidest moment, but if you really do the work, you can get back to like, oh, I was in 6th grade. I was playing soccer and I went and did my own thing. And then my dad yelled at me and said, don't do your own thing. Just listen to the coach. And for the rest of my life, I don't do my own thing. This becomes this narrative inside of you that came from something so small and stupid. And you can change it.
It was a little over a year ago. I don't know what grabbed hold of me. I think I was in the beginning of this sort of healing process. And my mind went back to the earliest memory I can remember. And I started writing it down, and I wrote it down like a story. And I was 2 years old. I'm told that I had jumped off of a table that was on the deck. I broke a toe, ended up going in, getting an x-ray and stuff. And this 2-year-old child doesn't have, prefrontal cortex access like the rest of us. And so he's moving, this sort of marker around, and the doctor is not able to get a good x-ray. And my mom and my grandma happen to be in the room, and they keep telling me, don't do that. You're being a bad boy. These sorts of things. Like, the earliest memory I can remember is being told that I'm bad. And this split that happened when I started being like, I am capable of being something I don't want to be. And I think that for me, I mean, if you look at this in terms of like the Enneagram mindset and where I go in stress, I go to this very sort of moral, black and white, legalistic place. And that was a narrative that was running a thread that began as early as I can remember was, you are bad, be good instead. And, this creates a sort of hypervigilance around being morally superior and all these other narratives that spring from that. And it's like, wow, one moment, a 2-year-old being a 2-year-old can change your life.
Definitely.
What happened when you were 2, Noah?
No idea.
That was too long ago for you.
It really was. Yeah.
Yeah, you're like 60 or something, right?
Yeah. Remembering things from years and years ago becomes harder for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. That's the thing that's kind of amazing about what you were saying is that information is in there. I mean, it's that stuff that you just kind of push down. It doesn't go away. It doesn't dissipate. There is some memory in there, especially if it was impactful enough to change your narrative of yourself. It's definitely encoded. But
yeah, it might be really hard to access. And I don't know. For me, I've had things that took like years and years of just being like, is this the first time I felt like this? No. When was the first time I can remember? Oh, it was last week. That probably ain't it. When was the first time before that? And, years later, I'm like, oh, that's when I thought the world was unsafe. That's when I realized like anything could happen to anyone and we should be scared.
Yep.
Or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Every once in a while I have those breakthrough moments where I'm like actually like back in my 7-year-old body and experiencing a memory that it's like I'm right there. I'm like, oh, wow, I forgot about this, but this is important.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that happened to me last year when I separated from my wife and started embarked on this journey was I busied myself constantly, and I was out constantly. I was aware even in that moment that I was like trying to avoid a lot of the stuff that I was going to have to deal with. And after I just got exhausted by that, one of my favorite things to do became, oh, I just got off work. I'm going to spend the evening, the next 3 hours laying in bed with an eye mask on and just like prodding myself and seeing what I can stir up from the subconscious. And, man, so much of that stuff came up, and I don't know. I feel like I have gotten a lot of clarity. I'm still clumsy in so many ways. But man, the distance between when the projection that we were talking about happens and when I acknowledge that this is the way that I've sort of, layered on top my own story and my own interpretation is so much closer. And when those 2 points get close enough that they're actually present, like I said, that's that moment when the ego falls away and you stop hearing what you, I want to use the term like what you want to hear. It's not what you want to hear. It's what you expect to hear, and what's actually being said. I don't know how scalable that is. It's like, this is an individual work. This is something that each person has to sort of undertake.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think it can always just start with sharing. Like if you have people in your life you can trust, just talk. I mean, even if you're an idiot, which you are,
Mm-hmm.
just talk, and you can say, I think you suck, and I think you suck because of X, Y, and Z. And if you have people who love you, they'll be like, okay, well, I do suck in some regards, but are you sure you're not projecting something here?
Right.
And I mean, that's scalable, I think.
Yeah.
That's where it
It
begins.
is.
Yeah.
It takes that open mind though. Like, okay, so I am feeling all these things. Some of them make you look like a really bad guy. When I say them, you're going to get defensive. I'm sorry for that in advance. Try to hold on to those things and let's break this apart one piece at a time, because I really want you to show me all the ways that I'm also being stupid here.
Yeah. Well, the first is that you projected that I'll be defensive.
Sure.
Just in this example.
Fair enough. I mean, I think it's a pretty safe thing to assume.
Of course.
Yeah.
It's also projection.
It's sort of the assumptions that you go into a dialogue in.
Yeah. Do you think they help?
I think so. Especially,
Help you be prepared, I guess.
Well, exactly. It's like, I mean, it's essentially what you just said. This is the preliminary step. I just told you something I believe about you, and you said, I don't know if that's true. That's an assumption. I don't know. We're about to see. Right? It's the same process.
Right. Yeah.
But being able to put that out there and say, okay, typically speaking, when I've had a conversation like this, I say some things that I believe are true, but they are not true, and they're going to make you feel terrible. And you're going to want to respond in a defensive manner, and that's fine, but can we both try to stay present here? Can we both zoom out, take a step back, and like look at both of our interactions like they're up on a stage in front of us? And you and me get to be the observers here. And I didn't choose to have these thoughts. I'm sorry for them. I don't really think they're me, but they are how I'm feeling. So I guess, can we work through this together? Like, that definitely takes a large degree of vulnerability and trust, and you have to believe you're in a safe place to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good. It's a sort of accusation audit or a hook on this beat, so to speak.
I don't need no hook on this beat.
Sound like you did.
All I need is a track in the background. That's so meta.
Is it meta or meta?
It depends in my situation on what I'm saying. If the word data comes after it, it's meta. Because metadata sounds so dumb.
You could say metadata.
Metadata.
I kind of hate that too. Not as much as metadata.
I think of metadata as the sort of societal father figure for everyone.
That's interesting.
Metadata.
You know, there's a theory that we have the words. Okay, so let me start by saying this. Across the world, there are unrelated families. Okay, sort of like Asiatic language families, Native American language families. We got the Proto-Indo-European, right? They don't really have any connections. But across the world, we see that the words for mother and father are ridiculously similar. They're usually something like mama, papa, dada, baba, these types of things. And it's theorized that it actually is entirely based on the shapes of our mouths. These are like these lip sounds that occur. And then is the easiest vowel sound. It just comes out without any sort of articulation of the mouth. So I'm having this relationship. This is my first experience in the universe as a conscious thing. And I start talking to you, and it's like ba, ba, mama. And it's really cool to think about that the shapes of us actually, create some sort of like directionality of oral communication. I love that. That like really tickles me in a cool spot.
I see that.
I love it.
What spot would you say it tickles you?
It's like, I don't know, something clicks whenever I start looking into this stuff, and it is, yeah, it's thrilling. Probably get a little adrenaline rush from it.
What do you?
Why do you
that
think?
about?
What do you mean? Why do I think? I don't know, man, but I can't seem to stop.
Why do you think it tickles you so much?
That question could mean 5 different things.
That's why it tickled him so much. That was the answer.
I withdraw my question.
Do you second that?
I can't withdraw someone else's question.
I
Can I? Do I have permission to second your withdrawal?
You may.
I second the withdrawal.
Oh, awesome. Okay. No, I feel like this is related though. There is this this question in my mind, which is like, to what extent am I the result of the decisions that I've made? And if I am the result of the decisions that I've made, to what extent am I responsible for the options that I had in my mind? Am I just this cause and effect engine? Or am I actually like this autonomous thing with agency? You know, it's the free will question. It's a pretty minor question, I guess. You know, it doesn't really matter in the end. But, you know, like in this situation where it's like, okay, why do you get tickled by this idea? Why does it thrill you the way that it does? Why do you project this layer of meaning on top of other people's symbols? Like, in so many ways, I have just watched myself become this. In so many ways, I'm not so much choosing to be interested in a thing or to have certain dislikes or preferences. And in so many ways, I'm actually just engaging in a conversation with this body, with this experience right now, and saying, well, what do you like? I mean, we had this conversation when it came to food. It was like, well, if I've never had carrots before, let me try a carrot. Do I like it? I mean, I kind of do. It gives me a thrill, right? Let me try this mushroom. I don't like that. That's icky. And I don't know what value this perspective holds, but it feels more real to me than, no, I chose not to like mushrooms. Like, nobody would say that.
What's the greatest book of all time?
I've got a list in my head
Okay. Which one?
of my favorite books that I've ever
What's the
read.
top 3?
Top 3, I would say The Shadow of the Wind was really great. This is fiction. Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari was amazing. And I
Usually
really liked...
stop at 3 when there's top 3.
That was 2.
What? Was it?
I have said The Shadow
Well,
of the
no idea.
Wind and Sapiens
No way. There's something in the middle.
by Yuval Noah Harari.
Nope. This Is Our Time or something?
I said, this is fiction. The
That's not
Shadow
a
of
book?
No.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's, yeah. So, well, Frank, I have top 3. I would say that The Shadow of the Wind is a fiction book that I really like. Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari, that's a nonfiction book. Really changed my life in some big ways. And I really like The Nix. It was just well presented.
That's a great book. All right. So you came up with that in like 30 seconds.
Sure.
Had you not been interrupted. How many books did you go through to come up with the 3 greatest of all time?
You know, honestly, I wouldn't even say I went through a lot of books. There were like some flashes of books. I probably missed the one that I actually liked the most, but those were the top 3 that just popped into my head.
Yeah. That's
As books
interesting
that I
to think
do
about,
like.
isn't it?
It is. Noah? What are your favorite books?
I don't even know if I have an answer to that question. I don't think in terms of favorites.
What 3 come to your mind when you have to answer the question? I've got a gun to your head right now. I don't, actually.
Interestingly, the ones that always come to mind are the ones that are meant simply for entertainment.
Uh-huh.
I really like A Year of Living Biblically. I really like Sex, Drugs, and Cocoa Puffs. I really liked.
What other Klosterman book do you like?
The first one was A.J. Jacobs.
Oh, okay.
Clusterment?
Chuck Klosterman.
Oh.
Or Klosterman? I don't know how you say. Chuck, if you listen to this, let us know how you say your name.
He won't.
I know. I really liked Think Again by Adam Grant too. That kind of tickles my organizational development, organizational psychology, brain clit, or whatever you said.
Would you say that it gives you an organizationism? That was like orgasm. But
Please cut that.
No problem.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I like to read and I love music, but don't ask me what my favorite, like I can tell you if you ask me my favorite band, I'll say, Wilco, the Raconteurs. I'll name 3 or 4 that are probably good answers for that question. But don't ask me my favorite song or album. No idea.
Yeah.
I don't know how you answer that question.
Yeah, I'm pretty bad. I can't even choose a sports team.
They're all
I hear it's relationally based.
right. That's different completely, I think. But when you're talking specifically about something that was created for creativity's sake, I don't know how you put a value judgment on that. Just don't think it's fair to.
Yeah, I'm similar. It's just like, what have I enjoyed and what do I remember? What's currently relevant to me?
Sure.
Honestly, like earlier, I was trying to come up with a totally random set of sounds, and I realized, oh, wait, no, actually, I just saw an advertisement saying that Arnold Schwarzenegger came out with a new show on Netflix called Fubar. And I just, changed it ever so slightly. It was in no way.
I knew that's what you did.
Yeah.
Oh, I never heard of this Fubar thing. That's why I was so lost, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. I don't think there's particular value in sort of ranking art. But what I was getting at was the tendency. It's not a tendency. The fact that people do this. Most people can tell you the greatest movie of all time. What their favorite movie. Most people know the answer to this question, but they didn't come by it honestly. They didn't assess all movies ever created. They don't necessarily have criteria for it. It's just the one that came to mind first when they got asked the question.
And it's super interesting. I just don't. I would have no answer for what my favorite movie is. It's kind of like, you asked me when Amy was here, what's your favorite color? Because Thatcher wanted to write all of our names in our favorite colors. And I was like, oh, I don't even know. How do you answer that question? Why does it even matter? I went with blue. I like blue.
It's a good one.
Is it my favorite?
Sure.
I don't know.
I think that yeah, I mean, we're having 2 different conversations for sure. Like, and it's fine that we are, but I think what Frank's pointing to is like, there is something that happens in the brain when somebody primes you with this question. Your brain either goes, I can't think of that, or it starts trying to do this quick like slideshow thing of, I don't know, if I had to, what movies would I say right now? And a couple of like covers pop up for whatever reason. Jaws just came to mind. It's not in any way my favorite movie, but it went through my brain and I went, nope. And it just went to the next one and the next one.
Right. But my point is that I would not do that. I would say, I don't know. How do I answer that question? I wouldn't do that.
Sure.
If you
Might
press
be a
me and
bad
say,
question for you then.
if you press me and say you have to give me a list, I'll give you a list. But
And then what happens?
I talk about what my favorite things are, not what's the greatest of all time.
Right. And if you had to, like, even what you just said was, I'll give you a list of 3 or 4 things. And like what you're sort of implying there is, I might not even give you, this is just a list, right? I'm probably forgetting someone.
You can't even remember all the books you've read,
Right.
or movies you've seen, or songs you've listened to.
Of course not. But a lot of people feel like they have autonomy when they can't remember. Like, what are you going to do next with your life is not likely to be an informed decision because you didn't assess every single thing in the world to determine it. You just used this slideshow. And so, I think that's what Jake was talking about with the free will stuff is like, what feels like free will seems to be a lot narrower than free.
Yeah. That's essentially the point is like, sure, I might feel like I chose out of this list of 3 things, but where'd that list of 3 things come from? Like those were in some way predetermined by that experience I had in the hospital room that day at 2 years old. Like these things are changed by my experiences.
It's possible. It's probably possible that I could become a professional lacrosse player. But up until this point in my life, I've never played lacrosse. I've never watched lacrosse. I don't have any interests in that direction. So to say I have free will to just choose to become a professional lacrosse player, I mean, it's not untrue, but it's so unlikely that it just seems less than free.
Have you ever watched, there's a YouTube channel called Challenge Accepted?
Mm-mm.
This YouTuber, Michelle Carre, she takes on different challenges to become different things. And it's really cool. I mean, she's went to SWAT Academy. She's done a bunch of like military type things. She's competed in a, excuse me. She's competed in a beauty pageant. She's run a marathon in the hottest place on earth. Like she just picks these different things and does them. Like, but she like dives all the way into it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
She tried out for the UK cheerleading team, like competitive cheerleading. And she's like doing real tricks. Like she's doing real, I don't know the names of them, but she's being thrown up in the air and held, you know what I mean? Like she's doing it. It's really cool. My point is only that, I mean, I think you're right. You can do it if you wanted to do it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to be honest, the fact that lacrosse came up for me, I think makes it a lot more likely than, becoming a professional knitter.
Oh, I thought you were going to go with another sport.
No.
Maybe knitting is a sport.
Yeah. But my point is like, even lacrosse was in my head somehow. Knitting even further off, I just seems even less likely, but
both of those things are more likely than whatever you didn't say.
I know. I'm probably going to become a professional lacrosse knitter.
Competitively.
Chase adventures, Frank. Be a game changer.
You might invent the sport of professional lacrosse knitting. You may have just done it.
Yeah. In Spanish, what's cross? Cross?
Like two cross? Cruzar?
Crussar. Oh, so it would be la crussar, knitter.
I don't know if there's a different word for like a cross.
A
was gonna
cross
say.
knitter. Like the sport of knitting crosses seems like it could be a thing.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Okay, so like if we're talking about a cross between, this makes a lot of sense. So you could say in biology they would say el cruce, like a hybrid animal,
Oh, yeah.
or you could say mezcla, which is mix,
Mezcla.
or a mix.
What about the object of a cross?
That's just la cruz.
La cruz.
Mm-hmm.
And what's knit?
Knit? I don't know. You're asking me words. I have no idea. Tejer?
La crosse tejer? Tejer.
Tejer.
La crosse tejer.
La Cruz.
La cruz.
La cruz. Yeah.
Tejer. Yeah, there you go. You could become that. It's probably an untapped market. Hey, it's Frank again. Thanks for listening to an Origins episode of the Unbecoming Platypus podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast to stay updated on future episodes. You can also check us out online at theunbecomingplatypus.com. We hope these conversations inspire you to improve your communication skills and deepen your connections with your own friends and loved ones. Until next time, this has been the Unbecoming Platypus podcast.